what we're talking about. The fact that I saw that cute little email photo that you guys sent out, the APSE. I look like that maybe twice a week. This is what I look like most of the time. That's journalism 101. So without further ado, hi, I'm here.
Does everybody want to turn their cameras on or leave them off?
I want to see some faces. Come on. I mean, I'm not looking my best. I feel like I can.
And now I'm thinking that disabled cameras or something. Can I see y'all? Okay, excellent. Okay. Don't make me nervous like that.
Hello, beautiful people. Go sit down, dog. Hello, hello.
So you guys, most of you, I think, know me. If not, I'm Lisa Wilson. I'm an editorial director at The Athletic, and I'm the immediate past president of APSE. My term just ended this summer, but I still do a lot with our committees, including our student liaison committee, which is why we set these up with you monthly. And very happy tonight to have Kimberley Martin. You read her bio in the email, but I'll just recap. Started at the record. I'm doing it by memory. Let's see how well I do.
Okay, let's see with all the job changes. Let's see.
Well, you know, I always had an interest in this. I tried to lure you to the Buffalo News, and you did come, but 6 months after I left. But I'm not holding that against you. Yeah. Started at the Record in New Jersey, went to Newsday, went to the Buffalo News as a columnist, went to the Washington Post as a Washington football team beat writer, then went to Yahoo as senior NFL writer, and last March joined ESPN. And you see her on ESPN.com and The Undefeated, her stories. You see her on ESPN everywhere, Get Up, NFL Countdown, everything she's on, and she also podcasts. So Kimberley has done it all and can answer any of your questions, you know, not just being on TV, but also has that print background. So generally how we do these is I just kind of give an introduction and then let you go ahead with questions. Normally we had a larger group, people were kind of raising their hands, but I think this is a small enough group tonight that if you have a question for Kimberley, you can just unmute. Please identify yourself and your school and then ask away with the questions. Kimberley, before we start, do you mind sharing your email with the students? Because this is going to be recorded on our YouTube page and someone might watch the playback and have a question for you.
Got it. All right, so Kimberley, biggest pet peeve, most people spell it wrong. So when you're writing down my email address, make sure you spell the first name right. It's Kimberley, Kimberley .martin@espn.com. So you guys can hit me up. Again, Kimberley, regular spelling, except it's Ley.
Thank you. Okay, so yeah, we can get started with our questions.
What you got, y'all?
Hey, Ms. Martin. My name is Cullen Davis. I'm a junior at Alabama State University. My question would be, what did you do to perfect your style and skill as a sports writer for features and column articles?
What was the first part? How did
you perfect your style and skill, like evolve?
That's a good question. So number one, I think in journalism, authenticity and being true to who you are. Like that to me is beyond accuracy. I feel like accuracy is rule number one. But in this very saturated media landscape, I think when you lean into what makes you different, unique, special, I think that gets you a lot farther in life than if you try to fit some mold that you think you should be in. So I'm from Brooklyn. So I grew up getting the Daily News, the New York Daily News delivered to my house. I remember thinking, I want to make it here. I want to be in New York. Most people don't have the luxury of starting their careers in New York because it's so competitive, because it's so tough. So when I ended up getting into journalism, the first thing I did was actually the worst thing, which is try to be like the other guys that were on the beat with me. I wanted to be seen like the guys. I didn't want players to see me any differently. But the fact of the matter is, I am different. Like, you know what I mean? Like most of the reporters, even to this day, we definitely have more people of color, more women filling press boxes, but like, I'm not a middle-aged white guy. And at the time when I started, I thought it was a deficit. Like, oh, these players are used to talking to these men who look like this. And when they see me coming, they're going to assume I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm just here for numbers, or like, she didn't play the sport, yada, yada, yada. So the minute I decided to just lean into being me, and I'm an undergrad, I went to Wesleyan University in Connecticut. I was a psychology and African American studies double major. So I'm proof that you don't need to study journalism in undergrad. But I think because I was a psych major and because I worked in finance before even going to grad school to study journalism, I think I interact with people differently. Like, I'm about what makes them tick. Like, that's the psych major in me. I care about guys beyond the field. So getting into journalism wasn't because I wanted to go to games. Like, I wanted to tell people's stories. So I feel like that curiosity is inherent to me. So whether you send me to cover baseball, which I've done, you send me to cover football, I've done the New York City Marathon, Little League stuff, you know, like high school fencing, like I've done it all. I think even if I was never to do sports again, that curiosity and the questions and I think when you see people as people, let me say that again, when you see people as people, and that sounds very basic common knowledge, but you'll be surprised how often that does not happen in sports reporting. It allows you to connect with them differently so that your writing is I think it helps your writing. It enhances your writing, because if you're only focused on what happens between the white lines or what happens on the court, I think you end up missing stories about the people, which then sort of colors what happens in the games, if that makes any sense. So I'm from Brooklyn, I'm from New York, daughter of immigrants, didn't come from money, like the immigrant background, like all of those things sort of, that's the lens I see people and that's how I relate to people. So I see these men as individuals. And I think when you do that, it allows you to notice when a guy that's typically happy every day in the locker room is suddenly quiet. And you go and talk to him and you're like, yo, what's up? And he tells you about his cousin who just, died or whatever, and how he's having a tough time with that. That has nothing to do with the game stuff, but it gives you a window into who he is, right? If you inherently are observant and watch how people interact with each other in a locker room, or if you see how they celebrated, a victory or a score, like I just was in Cleveland, one of the many times I'm in Cleveland, and this kid, he rushed for like 1,000,000 yards in his first start. And I'm trying to remember his name now. Now I'm blanking. But plays for the Cleveland Browns. I can't believe it because I talked to him on the phone, and I'm gonna see him this week, so that's sad. But he literally was talking about how he was on a fishing boat, like working on a fishing boat like 3 years ago, and to be in an NFL game rushing for like 200 yards or whatever in a game that his team needed when they had all these injuries, like that's a beautiful thing. And I think when you look for stories like that beyond, Tom Brady's really good, I think it can sort of help you a little bit. D. Ernest Johnson. Okay, I'm sorry. I was gonna kill myself if I did not remember that poor kid's name. But he was such a good kid, and I was so happy for him. And I needed to give him a shout out because those are the stories that you really care about. And I think when you're able to tell, show that here's a guy that didn't give up on his dream, like I think that's pretty cool. So anyway, sorry for rambling, but hopefully that sort of answers that question.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Are you? I
can't hear you.
Are you muted? Oh, wait. You're muted again. Try it again.
Me now?
Yeah, now we can hear
you now.
Sorry about that.
You're good.
My name's Kyrie Demos. I'm actually
Hello.
from Buffalo. So with you working at the Buffalo News for a little bit, that's pretty cool to see. But my question is, for you, because you talked about it already, you have a background in like the old school style print journalism. Obviously, you transition now to ESPN and doing a lot more digital stuff. So, what would you say is your best bit of advice to share in terms of that space? Because I that's how I was. I started out as a writing for a newspaper, and I've been able to dabble into some of the other digital platforms now.
So what's the question?
So, for you to have your base in print journalism and to fast forward to now where you're doing TV and podcasting and all that stuff like that, what are just some things that you would suggest for someone who has taken a route like that, with me having taken a similar route?
Oh, I mean, I think it's good, like, first off, let me just say, I think my LinkedIn bio, which is terrible, I never use LinkedIn anymore, but my LinkedIn bio says I'm a storyteller by any means necessary, right? And I think that's sort of how you have to look at yourself in journalism, no matter the medium, whether it's print, newspaper, whether it's magazine, whether it's a blog, website, whether it's a podcast, radio, TV, any sort of medium, you are communicating stories. Stories either about the game, it's about the people, whatever. It's about a particular sport, event, blah, blah, blah. I think a lesson that I learned, I mean, I got into journalism late. Like I said, I studied psychology and I worked in finance. So I ended up going to grad school after I'd been out in the real world. So I got my grad degree, my master's degree later than a lot of people. So it took me a little longer to realize that you have to get comfortable in all of these mediums. And one of my mentors, who is at NFL Network right now, but one of my mentors had said, you don't have to be great at TV, radio, print, podcasting. You don't have to be great at all of them, but you have to be able to be good at them, right? Because writing is my passion. And it's the one thing that I do not have a lot of time to do anymore. Last season, because of the pandemic, I literally started the same week that COVID shut everything down. So that in itself is a whole other hour about how I made the adjustment to ESPN literally the same week as the pandemic. But I was able to write more last year because of COVID. Now, because I'm on the road and I'm traveling, like yesterday, I just got back from Nashville. I don't have to write, but I am a writer. That's how I see myself. But even now, if my mentor was on this call, he would probably text me and be like, you're not a writer, you're a storyteller. And I think that's a lesson that I keep trying to remind myself, that it doesn't matter. You have to try a lot of different things, because you can't just be, well, I'm a newspaper person, I don't want to do a podcast, or like I have no interest. Like, I'll be honest, I really did not have interest in being on television. I really didn't, because to me it's like, I love being able to be at home writing a column looking like this. I love that, like, I love where it's just my byline. All you're seeing is my byline and you're just reacting to the words. That's it. Now on TV, you're reacting to like, oh, well, how's her makeup today? How's her hair? Like, oh, this dress. I wonder where she got this dress. Like, oh, I don't really like that dress. That's all I want. Like, all these things people are responding to. And as a woman, you get more criticism and more love because of how you look, which I think is bullshit, but whatever. That's the reality. So as much as I love the written form, and to this day, I'm still trying to figure out how to carve out time to write the stories that I'm best at telling, and obviously get back to writing columns. I recognize that there is inherent value in stretching yourself. Like, the TV aspect that was the piece of the portfolio that I was missing. And until a mentor said to me, like, it's okay to leave the Washington Post, your dream paper, and go to Yahoo, go to a website. Like, the Washington Post is a legacy paper, and I agonized over leaving that place because I felt like growing up, like, to like, Mama, I made it. Like, I'm at the Washington Post. Like, yes. And then I realized I'm still going to be me, whether like the same me that was at the Buffalo News and Newsday and the Bergen Record in Jersey, and that was at Yahoo and at ESPN. I'm literally, it's the same me. Now I just have a little bit more TV experience. So you guys got to get comfortable being uncomfortable when people say, hey, you should try this, or hey, why don't you do a podcast, or why don't you start doing things on social media? And you're like, oh, I don't know. You got to push yourself towards it, because that's the world we're living in. So when I see former colleagues that I work with in newspapers, they're doing podcasts in addition to their newspaper jobs. Like, their podcasts, they're recording video, they are doing post-game videos. So you're not gonna be able to survive this business, and Lisa can tell you that too, unless you're willing to wear a lot of hats. And the quicker you get comfortable wearing a lot of hats, the better off you'll be.
So much.
Any other questions? Hello.
I'm Jade. Hey, I'm a junior at NCAT, North Carolina A&T State University. My question for you is, I love listening to First Take, Her Take every Wednesday when y'all do it. I'm a huge fan. So actually, I was wondering, how did you guys get into that? I want to kind of do my own podcast here at A&T with other Black women in sports, and I just kind of need advice. You know, if you have any tips on how to get started, what to do and what not to do, I'd really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for being a First Take, Her Take listener. Those of you who aren't, shame on you. You are missing out. No, I will be honest with you. Again, podcasting, not something that I was even thinking of promoting, trying to do. Literally, one of the producers of First Take hit me up like in December, or no, like late November of last year. I was like, hey, would you be interested? Like, I kind of mentioned your name, like I threw your name out there for like a podcast, like, you know, just women talking sports. I'm like, okay, cool. December, he hits me up and was, because he told me in November, like, hey, you know, I don't know if it's gonna go anywhere, but just so you know. I'm like, all right, cool. Not thinking that like the wheels had already been in motion. And so in December, I was told like, hey, you and Chiney Gumike and Charlie, you guys are gonna be doing this podcast. And I was like, oh shoot, we're really doing it? Oh, okay, cool. Like, when are we launching? Like, what? They're like, oh, in 2 weeks. Wait, what? So I will tell you that podcast, and now Chiney is no longer on it. Elle Duncan on SportsCenter is on it. But I will tell you that podcast, the three of us didn't know each other beforehand. So that we had to like get to know each other, like, and also we hadn't done a podcast before. So the rhythm and the timing of, hey guys, welcome to First Take, Her Take, like all of it, like how to weave in and out of conversations. And, you know, I think the podcast is sort of morphed into, it is sports, it is personal life, it is like relationship stuff, but not like a lot, but, you know, not politics, but I mean like current events, like especially when current events bleeds into sports. COVID, obviously we've got NFL players. I mean, that's my forte. So I'm always talking about the NFL players and like the COVID response and all that stuff. So it is just a podcast. Like, the goal of our podcast, and I'm going to say this to you because this is what you want to hit on. The podcast should feel like people are eavesdropping on a conversation with friends. So when you say, I want to get a podcast together of young women talking about sports, you know, they should feel like your friends, right? They should be your friends. And so when we listen in, it's to be like, oh, let's see, okay. Because you hear us transition from talking about coffee and celebrities to Dak Prescott, to COVID, to breakdancing, to rap music. Like, I think the best podcasts give you a sense of who the characters are, like who the hosts are, where you feel like you can connect with all of them or maybe one of them, but it feels like I could see myself being friends with these people. You know what I mean? Like, I feel some sort of level of comfort with them, and that And the hard thing for me on the podcast was sort of peeling back layers of my life and who I'm being comfortable talking about myself, because I got into this, I don't want to date myself, but I got into this business not to be a brand. Back then, we were not trying to be a brand. We were not trying to, like, we weren't on the gram, like, you know, posing and stuff. Like, it was none of that. It was, hey, I just like sports. I want to write stories, the end. Now it's like, Kimberley, like, you got to think about your brand and like, what are you? Like, what, like, and so the brand is important now because that's where we live in, but that's not the energy and focus. It was not back then, like a decade ago, it was not about you being the story and people talking about you. It was, I just want to talk about these people. So on the podcast, it has been a challenge and one that I'm still working on, trying to, you know, let listeners into, you know, my life, as well as talk about my experiences on the road. Like, I take for granted, people have no idea what it's like to travel, cover a game on Sunday in one city, come back home, do TV, go to a game on Thursday night, do TV, you know, cover the game, fly home, go to another city. Like, people have no concept of how my bags just stay packed until it's Friday, Saturday morning, and I'm rushing to the airport. And now I'm switching clothes in and out. You know what I mean? Like, it's talking about the journey that is very strange to me, because I'm used to telling other people's stories. But my advice to you, Jaden, is make it fun, make it informative, make it authentic. Don't try to be like a Stephen A, or don't feel like you have to be like these people. Say what is honest and authentic to you, and just have fun with it. Because I think if you're having fun with it, other people will respond to it and want to keep listening, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Yes, that makes sense.
Yeah, good luck with that. I'm excited for you.
Hi, Kimberly. I'm Jess. I go to Northwestern. I just wanted to ask, so I know that you've already accomplished so much in your career thus far. So I'm curious on how you got to where you are today. Like, what are the specific things that you think contributed to your success?
Okay, Jessica, don't tell your parents that I'm going to say this. Honestly, the number one reason I'm in this position is because, in general, I don't listen to a lot of people. And I caution, because that doesn't mean don't listen to anybody, but I think you have to get very good at being self-aware. So you have to know what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are. So I had people that told me they didn't think I was a good writer, or that my resume wasn't good, or, hey, you know, when I first went to Syracuse and got my master's, like I said, I'm from New York. So people don't typically start their careers in New York. So the advice I was given was, hey, you should try to go to a smaller market and go to St. Louis or somewhere else and like try to work your way up. And I was like, cool, I hear that, but I'm not going to do that. Now, did that make any sense at the time? Not really, because I really wanted a job. But I think there are moments where you bet on yourself. And the fact that I honestly, each step of the way, I bet on myself. I can't tell you how long I'm going to be at ESPN. Maybe ESPN is like, okay, it was great having her for 2 years, but we're done. Maybe I'm there for 20 years. Who knows? But at the end of the day, I think I am my worst critic. So there's nothing that an editor or a mentor or a company like ESPN is going to tell me that's going to make me believe that I don't have talent, if that makes any sense. But I also know that I work my ass off as well. You know, part of why, the reason I say this is a great outfit, because the grind of sports journalism. It's like, you have to be okay not having a life sometimes. You have to be okay, especially when you're starting out, giving all of you to the job at times. And I know that's not, that sounds terrible. I'm not saying work yourself to death or anything like that, but I'm saying focus, if you spend more time focusing on how do I get better? How do I fine tune the areas that are good but not great? What are the holes? Like if you think of your skill set as like a pie, right? The circular pie, what slices are missing? Like what are the holes in my portfolio? And I use portfolio because I was a finance major. I worked in finance, but for me, TV, like on air, having an on air presence, that was the missing piece. So I'll tell you, my career, I've jumped around and people gave me hell for that. And part of it, I do think, is because I'm a woman. I honestly believe, because male colleagues that I have, they've jumped around and people didn't give them nearly as much grief about it. But no one has anything to say right now because I'm at ESPN, right? Okay. But leaving the Jets beat and Newsday to go to Buffalo, I was going to Buffalo News to be a columnist, and people still were like, why are you going to Buffalo? Like, you're in New York, like this is where you want to be. And for me, it was being very strategic about, I want to be a columnist because there are only a few women that look like me that get to have that title by their name. So that was very strategic. Going to the Washington Post, leaving the Washington Post, actually, a lot of people are like, I don't know, you're leaving the Post to go to Yahoo, which changes its direction every few years. Like, is that smart? And I had to not listen to that. So my advice, Jess, and like everybody else on this call, it's okay. Think about what you want to do, like what your long-term goal is. But in the meantime, be really working and like focus. Like when I talk to students, like a lot of them are like, I want to cover the Yankees, or I want to be at ESPN. Okay, everybody does, right? Okay, but not everybody gets there. And the difference sometimes just is the people that aren't, focused on the goal 10 years from now. It's the ones that are like, hey, I cover high school field hockey, I cover college lacrosse, but I'm gonna find the most kick-ass college lacrosse. Like, I love covering high school sports. I really do love it because you are on the ground level. You're not like, the further up you get in covering pros, like I've covered the Yankees, like I've talked to Derek Jeter. You know how many stories about Derek Jeter there are? You know how many reporters have talked to Derek Jeter and he's told them nothing of substance? Like, there's a million of us, right? But to be somebody who's covering Garden City field hockey, one of the most storied programs on Long Island, like that, to me, when I did that working for Newsday, that was special. That meant a lot to me. Not that talking to Derek Jeter didn't, but I think you have to be, wherever your feet are, you've got to give everything in that moment. Still keeping your eye on like what the vision is, but work really hard so that you are perfecting whatever flaws you think exist in your game, so that when you're interviewing, you can be like me and be like I probably shouldn't even screw it. When I sat down with ESPN, I was like, they were like, we don't really have a job right now, but we're just trying to fill you out. And I'm like, cool. Like, I'm happy at Yahoo. I'm not looking to leave. That day, I literally had an interview with Dak Prescott set during Super Bowl week. So when I talked to ESPN, I was like, okay, whatever. Like, this is good. Get to know you. Great. And they were like, oh, we really like you. And I'm like, that's wonderful. Even if you don't have a job now, I know that you will hire me at some point. Like, it's all good. Like, I'm not pressed about this right now. You know why I was able to do that? Because I was happy where I was, because I was happy, I was working on the craft. It wasn't, God, I can't wait to get to ESPN. So when ESPN came, it was like, oh, wow, cool. This really worked out. And I think if you spend time working in the here and now, those doors will open and other people will see like, wow, Jess is really focused. Like, she's really dedicated. Like, I see something special in her, because they see that you're about the work and not necessarily the brand, although you can work on that on the side. So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Kimberly. I'm Erin. I'm also a grad student at Northwestern. I was just wondering if there was anything that you wish you did more of in your academic career before entering the professional world that you could possibly share with us.
Well, Erin, I wish that I studied journalism undergrad so I didn't have to pay for grad school. No, honestly, No, undergrad, I don't have any regrets about anything because the way I did it has sort of worked out to this point. So academically, I don't have any regrets. I think Wesleyan had Wesleyan, which is in Connecticut, where I went for undergrad. They had a college newspaper. I never wrote for it because in my head, I was going to get my psych degree and I was going to be a relationship counselor. That's what I thought. And then, you know, the writing bug was always there. So I never, until I worked in finance, I was like, gosh, this is really boring. I don't like sitting at a cubicle. That's what made me think, all right, let me, I was literally at my cubicle like, okay, let me apply to grad school at Syracuse and see what happens. So no, I don't have any regrets. And I will say, you know, somebody could look at, I think for a long time, I sort of felt like, ugh, I'm getting a late start. Like this sucks. Like even in grad school, I was like, wait, why are all these kids? Didn't you guys just study journalism for 4 years? Like I have no journalism experience. What are you people doing here getting your master's? I used to feel bad. Like it was you know, like it stunted my growth in a sense. But I'll be honest, being a psych major is probably the thing that I lean on the most. The best friends that I have to this day, they're not in journalism. They're actually from finance. Like my closest girlfriends who've known me the longest, we were sales associates at U.S. Trust Company of New York together, like on West 47th Street. So I bring that up just to say, don't have regrets about anything. I think try as many things as possible, because while I didn't like finance, the great thing about it was I know that if journalism ended for me tomorrow, like I've worked in other arenas, I'll be fine. That the people who knew me the longest it's so funny watching them see me in this light, like you're like on TV. It's like we used to go to happy hour, like, you know, after work, you know. That's a cool thing. But I think part of life is figuring out what isn't the right fit. So I guess, yes, write for the school paper, I guess. But I'll be honest, I didn't need to, because like, you know, I think study, take classes that interest you, write about subjects that may intimidate you, anything that challenge yourself. Like that really is what I want to impress upon you. Challenge yourself to get out of your comfort zone. Trust me. Everybody thinks this TV stuff is super glamorous. Yeah, it's cool. I have TV, but I'll be up at 3 a.m. and at the studio by 5:30, you know, like in the morning. Like the TV stuff is great, whatever, people know me off that, but I wouldn't appreciate my journalism career if I hadn't tried other things and realized I can make it outside of journalism, but I really want to be here because I had a chance. You know, my path could have gone this way, and instead I took it this way. And I'm really proud of myself, you know? So I think that should be the lesson. Try as many things, challenge yourselves. If there's something you don't know, if there's a sport or an event that you don't know about, like there are people that are experts on MMA. Back when when MMA first started, they were like, what is this new MMA? What is this new sport? No one knew about it, but they were like, you know what? Who knows? This might be a thing. And they became MMA experts. So when companies like ESPN come around, they're like, oh, this MMA thing is pretty popular. Now, hey, we should get that guy who's the MMA expert. You know, that was something that's not like, that was like a purposeful action to like learn about this sport that nobody really knew about, but he could see the writing on the wall and was like, hey, there might be some interest here. So just try a lot of stuff and don't worry about regrets. Things happen for a reason, trust me.
Thank you.
Ms. Martin, I know you mentioned earlier about honing your skills and your craft in whatever field you're in that moment. But specifically in your journey, how did you transition from being a beat writer for the Jets and the Washington Post to being a senior writer, NFL writer for Yahoo and eventually ESPN and everything of that nature? Right.
So being a beat writer is very different from being a columnist versus being a national reporter. But I think being a beat writer informs your reporting and the way you see things, so that when you write columns, you speak from a place of, I'm in that locker room. I've been in an NFL locker room. I can speak with authority because I know what it's like to talk to players. I know what it's like to deal with head coaches and all these other things. I think I'll use, because Lisa's running this call, I'll use the Buffalo News as an example. Because when I first got to Buffalo, it was at the height, I'm trying to think, it was 2017, I think, 2017. And it was the same. Lisa, see, she knows.
That's the year I left. So, that's why I remember.
Yeah, okay, right. All right. So when I got to the Buffalo News after Lisa abandoned me, it was around the time that Trump was in office, and he had called players SOBs for kneeling and all this other stuff. So here I'm in Buffalo, like this black woman, and I'm like, all this stuff is happening. So now players in the Bills locker room, they're pissed at Trump. They're kneeling on the sidelines and doing other things. LaShawn McCoy was doing his own thing. I don't know what he was doing, but it was quasi kneeling something, a protest of some sort. Then you had veterans outside the Bills stadium protesting the players for kneeling and doing all sort of sideline antics during the national anthem. So part of, I was a columnist in Buffalo, right? But being a beat writer teaches you to be observant. It teaches you to watch players, to watch things. And like that day that I drove to the facility, I saw veterans with American flags like outside the stadium. And I drove my car, parked it, then walked all the way back outside onto the street and was like, what are you guys doing? Like, what's the protest about? They're like, we're so upset about those players, da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, okay, any message for those players who I'm about to see in like an hour? I'm going into the locker room. And so, but it's the curiosity that first stopped me. Like, there's only like 5 of them. It wasn't like a huge like crowd, right? But it was 5. And I was like, what would possess these guys on a random Wednesday to be out here? So they were veterans. They felt betrayed by the team that they root for every Sunday. So, okay, march back into the locker room. I'm like, hey, you know, those guys are outside protesting how you, and they're like, oh yeah, we see them every day. This is what I would want them to know though. This is how I feel. And so this story, I was just there that day to write like a regular sort of column. It ended up being an A1 sort of feature column because I was curious. Because in the height of, you know, Bill's football world, you have the president talking about, it's like sports and politics, you know, colliding like it does. And because I took that moment to not only ask these people what they thought and to be genuinely curious about how they felt, regardless whether you agree with people or not, you're curious about how they think. And then to then ask the people on the other side, what's your reaction to that? What are you hoping to accomplish? Both sides. What are you hoping to accomplish by your actions, right? And so that ended up being a big piece because it's bigger than, sometimes things are bigger than sports. And I think this is why I say when you hone your voice, like being authentic, like as a Black woman covering Black players in the NFL, I am very interested in what people think about the president, you know, name calling them, or how players feel about Colin Kaepernick, or how, you know, this is a few years ago, but I'm interested in how they're responding to COVID and all these things. But had I just gone there, like the rest of my colleagues, had I just driven past those same veterans and parked my car and walked into the facility like always, I don't have that A1 feature. And it's strictly curiosity. So I think when you're genuine about trying to understand people's points of view, not because you're looking for clickbait, not because you're looking some sort of gotcha journalism, but you're genuinely curious. Tell me how you feel and what you hope to accomplish. I think then it informs the reader better. And had I not, I would have just written a normal, hey, we talked to starting defensive end today column, you know, which just anybody can do that. That's why I say lean into what makes you you. So me always thinking about that psych background, thinking about people, what makes them tick, what motivates them, what do they care about? That's what leads me to some of my best stories. It's not the Bills beat the Jets 40-10. You know what I mean? Like I've written those columns, but they're the ones that are special, and the moments that stick out are when I think you got your best just following your natural curiosity and intuition.
I forgot to mention this earlier. I actually am working for the Bills now, so but not in a reporting role. But just what was your experience like here in Buffalo, and also with the Buffalo News?
Oh my God, I love me some Buffalo. Now, granted, I was only there for a couple months, whatever, Lisa, before, and I still would have been there had the Washington Post not come calling 6 weeks into my job in Buffalo. But when I've left Buffalo, like 4 years ago. And wait, is it 4? Yeah. And people that have, we just hired a young woman as our new Buffalo Bills ESPN reporter. Her name's Elena, and she'd called me. She was in the Charlotte area. She was like, should I take it? I don't know. And I was like, I'm telling you, when I think of the top 3 organizations that I get to cover, the Bills are 1 or 2. Like, they are up there because people are great. I wasn't there long enough to physically embrace a Buffalo lake effect sort of storm, but people are great. Organization, the GM, head coach, like coaches, players, it's a good place to be. So I don't have a regret about leaving Buffalo. I don't regret it, but I do miss it. And I think that's probably a really great sign. Somebody who's from New York City, views Buffalo and means like sepia tones, like, oh, I miss that place. That's a good sign. So good for you for getting a job there.
Yeah, and just even going off that, what was it like working for the news? I've heard several stories, and I've talked with several people from the news. What was it like being there?
I mean, I really enjoyed working for the Buffalo News. Leaving was really hard. Leaving was actually really hard because I felt like it was clear that I was brought there because I had a different voice, because I wasn't from Buffalo. I had no connection to the Bills. It was not emotional for me whether they win or lose. Like, I came there with a fresh set of eyes. Like, I had experience because I covered the Jets for so long. Obviously, Jets played Buffalo a lot. So as a team, like, I understood, the inner workings of the team. But yeah, I thought I was needed up there, honestly. And that's one of the reasons I was sad to leave, because the columnist gig was created for me to come, and I wanted to. Leaving a columnist gig was really tough because I thought my different perspective, but still, I wasn't going up there to be the race reporter. I was going up there to write about football and write about bigger things. So I think I have a strong voice. I think I have a voice that's needed wherever I am, but I felt like, especially in Buffalo, I don't know. And of course now, I leave, maybe it's me now. I leave and all of a sudden they're, Super Bowl contenders. So maybe I should stay away. I don't know. I should leave Lisa's team alone.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
Anything else?
I have one more. Going back to when you was in NABJ, what were the skills and things that you did that made you stand out to win their emerging journalists and Salute to Excellence award?
Gosh, that was a decade ago. Jeez. Thank you, Colin, for reminding me how long ago that was. Honestly, probably a good thing that I'm like, I don't even know what I did. maybe it's a good thing because I think at that point I was a general assignment reporter. I won that award in 2011. That was like 5 months or so before I got the jet seat. So I was covering, like I covered the Giants Super Bowl win in Indy over the Patriots. I covered the New York City Marathon. I covered baseball. Like I was a backup baseball reporter. So I was always in the Yankees clubhouse and the Mets clubhouse, covered Yankees playoff games, playoff losses, basketball, Nets, Knicks, St. John. Like I was sort of jack of all trades, and features were always my thing. I know that's what set my writing apart. Because when you think of writing, for me, I don't know how many of you love to write, but for me, it is the best thing that you can do. Like if you can write an engaging story about an event or game that people already watched on television, but the way you write it draws them in and they read through the whole thing and you affect them in some way, whether it's the describing the sound of something, how something feels, like the taste, like the smell, like leads are the first. Like now when I read other people, like if you don't grab me in the first like 2 sentences, I'm out. Like that's how you, like that to me has always been sort of how I try to approach writing, especially in sports, because people already watch the damn game. So what are you gonna tell me? Bring me inside the huddle, bring me inside the locker room, you know, paint the picture, and not just show, don't tell. Like it's so basic, but I think as people get on in their careers, I think they forget about it. Like you could say an example of telling is, you know, Derek Jeter is very happy about the Yankees winning the World Series. Well, like, no, duh, okay. But if you show, like, describe to me how this man is in the clubhouse. Like, how was he, you know, when they recorded the final out? Like, what were the mannerisms? How did his voice sound? Like, was he dripping in sweat? Was he, you know, like, there's so many descriptive words to paint and illustrate the picture that you, like, I should be able to read it and deduce from all your descriptive language that Derek Jeter was happy in that moment. You know what I mean? So I think, I don't know, I guess that's what I did to get the Emerging Journals of the Year award. When I won it, I think I was the only sports person to win it. I think in NABJ beforehand, a lot of those awards went to young people that covered news. And I think, and in my career, I never wanted to cover, I have covered news, but I didn't like it because I felt like it was very like, and then this happened and blah, 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 blah. And it just was sort of like, all right, you're not really giving me anything. So sports to me was this great thing where it was like, there's inherent emotion, there's built in like revelry, there's disappointment and dejection, and there's like, it's a whole roller coaster, you know, like a cacophony of sounds. Like it is, like sports is great to me. And the fact that you get to weave in stories about these men that go beyond the field of play or the court, like there's nothing better than that. So I think the way I approach journalism and writing and storytelling, I think might be why I won the award. But I think because I wasn't trying to win awards, I think I was just trying to do somebody else's story justice, if that makes sense.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have one more question.
You again? What do you want, Jaden? What do you want?
So listening to First Take, Her Take, like I hear you guys talk all the time about just kind of some of the adversities that you all face being Black women in sports. And I just kind of want some advice on that. Like, how do you go about your day ignoring the negative comments on Instagram, even though like Instagram and Twitter and social media is like, that's your main platform now to get the news out. Like, how do you kind of filter negative energy versus good energy and keep your circle with good people around?
That's a great question, girl, because I don't know. That is another everyday struggle. Listen, let me tell you, ladies, it will be much more unfair. Not like if you are blessed to if your heart desires and you want to be on TV or you want to like be a star, like if that's what your heart desires, I hope you all get it. The bigger your platform is, the bigger the criticism, and it won't be, oh, she doesn't know anything about sports. It won't be that generic. The feedback you get, you know, the amount of times I've been told, I don't know why ESPN has her on television. Like, she's such an idiot. You know, like that kind of BS. Listen, we're not perfect. You know, I definitely, you know, I'm 19 months into a TV job. Like, I never was trying to be on TV. So being on TV there's still a learning curve for me. And I'm not a finished product. And I've gotten a head start on you guys, right? So there will always be growing pains if you're constantly trying to challenge yourself to do different things. I will not lie to you. It is very difficult to block out that noise. Because like I said, the best thing as a writer is people just know I'm a woman based on my byline. They're just reacting to the words. And if I make them feel something, then I've won, right? But people are responding to a whole different set of visuals when you're on television. So the fact that I obsess about, sorry guys, I didn't really fix my face today. But the fact that I was even worried, like, oh damn, like I didn't even get all juiced up for the kids. Like, come on. Like that in itself, like you start thinking about that stuff. On Instagram, people are like ruthless. And I say to my husband, I'm like, can you believe this person just said this? And he laughs. And I'm like, what are you laughing at? Because that is not funny. But he's like, I think this is when, if you take a step back from it, this is why I tell you guys, work on your craft, be self-aware, because a lot of self-awareness is sorely lacking in our business, in journalism, especially in TV, right? But if you are self-aware, you will know the areas in which, like, yeah, I didn't give my best effort there. Or like, you know what, I worked really hard on it and I still wasn't good enough. Let me go back and watch myself, or let me go back and read what I wrote to see how I could have improved. If you are doing that kind of work, in that moment that the emotions get to you and somebody who does not know you is making assumptions about you, telling you that you should be fired, is tagging ESPN and Stephen A and every Tom, Dick, and Harry about how you should be blown off the face of the earth. In that moment, it will be tough, but then you fall back on, I worked really damn hard to get here, and then you start to see it for what it is. Somebody who's just like, then you start to feel sort of sympathetic, like, gosh, the fact that they took the time, they must be in such a bad place. They must be so miserable in their own set of circumstances that they thought coming to your page where you unprovoked, but coming to spew negativity, that says a lot more about them, right? That's intellectual psych part of it. But in the moment, it's very difficult. But the quicker you get used to that, the better, because it will not change. And the bigger your stars grow and the more platforms you guys are on, ladies, that is what the easiest thing people can latch onto is the gender, to denigrate and to devalue your presence on a stage. Like, oh, well, she didn't play football, she don't know what's up. Like, ESPN just hires all sorts of Black people, you know, like that. Like, it's that sort of stuff that people latch onto because they're responding to the visual. They haven't even listened to what you're saying, because if the same words came out of a man's mouth, they probably would be like, I don't really agree with him, but whatever. You know, it's a very different vibe. So how do you deal with it? Oh, you develop a tough skin. Yeah, everybody says that. That's what you're supposed to do. It's very hard. Even at my big old age, I can't do it. You know what I mean? Like, it's an everyday struggle, but that's why you have the people in your corner. That's why if you're working, genuinely working and trying to get better, you will be validated in knowing, like, I'm putting in work and eventually I'll get to where I want to be. So that's the most important thing. People are going to hate, but focus more on the people that celebrate you, the people that make you feel good when you're around them. Those are the people that genuinely want to see you succeed. And the day ones, like the people who are with you, people are with you now, when, you know, as you start to build your careers, like the people that stick with you throughout the journey and watch you prosper, like that's what you lean on. And you sort of, you can delete those comments. I mute people a lot on Twitter. Twitter muting, and on Instagram. You'll learn to do that a lot too.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions before we wrap up?
Last chance, guys. Last chance.
Okay, I guess we're all set. Thank you so much. I know you had a hectic day. I appreciate you getting on to talk to us.
No. I appreciate your patience with the tech issues and all that stuff. Like I said, my email address, Kimberley, KIMBERLEY .martin@ESPN. I will be honest, I'm bad at emails, but email me and I'm definitely going to get back to you. Just send me a reminder if I happen to forget. But no, I definitely want to see you guys flourish and strive and you know, take our journalism world by storm. So I'm excited to see you guys taking my job one day. Shoot.
All right. Okay. Thanks very much. And we'll do this again next month. Everybody send out an email. Probably Thanksgiving break is coming up, so it'll be the middle of the month, but we'll send out an email newsletter to let you know our next session for November. All right, thanks, Kimberley. I'll use some flats when you come to Buffalo. That's wing talk for folks.
You sure do. You sure do. Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
Bye. Thank you, everybody.